Welcome to the Woman to Woman show, where we believe that truth plus transparency equals healing. Hosted by Trey Kearney, Regina Booker, Monetta Fields, Theodora Carter, Shayla Williams, Regina Howard Norman, and Sheila Isom. And our special guest tonight is Stephanie McNeil, forgiveness coach. We are happy to have her in the building again. Tonight, we will be further going into discussing forgiveness part 2. So if you were here last week, you probably know that we talked all about forgiveness, and it really got a little deep, and it needed to go a little bit deeper. So we invited Stephanie McNeil, our forgiveness coach, to come back and walk us through some things and talk us through some things and do some on-the-spot coaching like she did last week. So we talked on the back end, me and the Beauty Flies, and we had some revelations and some moments of clarity from what we said. And a couple of the ladies that I talked to, and I was actually doing some editing, and I sent edited clips to each lady, and I was just listening to our segment, and I was, oh my goodness, and I listened to a clip that I said where I said, forgiveness was taught in my home by my mom, basically by example of domestic violence being in my home, and my mom would have, get into an altercation with my stepdad, and the next morning everybody would act like nothing happened. She would be serving breakfast, eggs and bacon with a black eye or a bruised arm, and nobody said nothing. And it taught me that you just let people do things to you and you act like it didn't happen. And as I was editing and I watched that clip over and over again, it made me think, and Stephanie can jump in at any time when each of the ladies is speaking. It made me think, had I really forgiven my mother, or had I buried my feelings? And it also made me realize the difference between coaching and therapy, because I've been to therapy, but this thing had never come up. So for all of us, it's been aha moments. So let's talk about that. Let's just have a candid conversation. And I'll talk to you first, Steph. First of all, welcome, Stephanie, and I'll let you come in really quickly and introduce yourself. So come on in.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Stephanie McNeil, and I am a relationship educator. I am a licensed in identity and destiny. And for the past nearly almost 10 years, I've been known as a forgiveness coach. But really, you know what? None of those credentials matter, because one day I was confronted with the truth that even though forgiveness was on my lips, it wasn't in my heart. And even though it was my ministry, it had not become my mastery, because I didn't have the proper mindset. And so really with forgiveness, you have to, I'm not going to get churchy, as Trey says, early on you, but, we've heard, don't let the sun go down on your wrath, right? But when you do, that builds up resentment, right? And so, I mean, if you ask just about anybody out there, they're like, oh, I don't forget, I don't hold anything against anybody, but if you talk about it deeper, right? Just like Trey said earlier, if you dig a little deeper with it, you will hear, oh, well, this person, I've banished them out of my life. This other person, they are dead to me. What else do we do to fool ourselves? Oh, when you see that person, they change your energy. So those are all signs of, no, you haven't totally forgiven. But, it's especially for, Christians. It's not a popular thing to say that I'm holding unforgiveness, because, that's the whole foundation of the Christian faith, right? So,
yes.
So wow. It's not a popular thing, but it's such a common thing.
and I'll go around the room with everybody and ask this question, and you can tell me if you feel this way or not. Because each and every one of us, when we answered the question of how we learned about forgiveness, it was basically examples in our home, but each of us said, "But my mother was this," or "But my father was that," right? So have we made them the victim in our mind to avoid the fact that maybe we believe they owed us an apology to some degree? And what I mean by that is, in my situation, do I really feel in my heart? And I was thinking about these things, and I think we all should. Like, should she? Do I really feel like she should have left to give me a better example? And Regina, you're nodding. Gina, so you're shaking your head. So we'll come to you first. What do you think, Gina?
When you talk about forgiveness and really forgiving, I think about my relationship with my mother and the difference that I have between how I feel about her and how I feel about my grandmother. In my eyes, my grandmother could do no wrong. Um, but part of that feeling of love and ultimate respect I have for her was because my mom had me with her a lot of times. So even the things that I didn't think were fair growing up when I was raised by my grandparents, I was easier to forgive that because my grandmother was always there. But I'm realizing now as I get older, I thought I had forgiven my mom for stuff that I've resolved it. I did the prayer, and as a believer, you're taught to forgive so that you can be forgiven, right? So I said I needed to do that. And I thought I did the deeper work of releasing it. But then I realized over the past year and a half, not so much because I get frustrated. My mom is the type of person, I love her, but she expects you to do certain things, and I don't know how to share with her that expectation, at least from me, I think is not all the way fair, but I don't want to be disrespectful and not honor her as a mom. And part of that is because of what my grandmother taught me: honor your mother and your father. so,
Oh,
so even though I love my mom, and I'll be there for in a minute, but sometimes I just want to say, like, the expectation that you have that I should just stop, drop, and roll or be there. I'm like, you did made different choices when you were younger, having my sister and I. Well, we didn't get to have time with you that we wanted, but now that we're older, we have families. The expectation is that now I'm supposed to pivot and come see you as consistently as you want me to. When I'm like, well, that's not fair. Like, did you not remember how we grew up?
are you?
So,
And I'm gonna ask you something, and I'm gonna pass this ball over
right,
to.
right, right.
Are you harboring resentment or animosity? And Stephanie, you tell me what you hear.
So I realized over the last month and a half that I have been. I thought I released a lot. I thought I released it all. I'm the older one, so I had to get over it because I have to be the one to be there and be the balance between my sister and my mom and all that. But the older I got, I'm like, hey, hold, wait now. When she calls on me, it's like, Regina, I need you to do this. Regina, why you don't do this? And why aren't the grandchildren, coming to me and stuff? And I'm like, hey, hold, wait now, wait. They're grown. They're like young adults now. And I did my part when they were younger and I took them and brought them over and stuff. But they experienced certain things with you. That's not my charge. I
Steph,
want,
let
so
me
yeah.
hear what Steph, I need you to come in on this because like, I'm hearing some things myself, but I know that this is your space.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is that, I mean, I don't know how old Regina is, but,
54,
there were, I'm sorry?
54.
Okay, so like we're around the same age. So
Right,
our parents were baby boomers and the
right,
silent generation, right?
right.
And so that generation did a lot of things, especially the silent generation, which my parents were, out of duty. they were the ones that had to deal with being called the N word. They were the ones that had to deal with walking up to a bathroom and one saying white and one saying black. So they learned a lot about duty and doing things, you know, like I said, out of duty.
Mm.
So a lot of those expectations were just passed on to us. And so what we and I have recognized it even with my own children, when they get to be a certain age, we really have to let go and let them make choices, whatever they are. And you know, a lot of times the transition from parent when the kids get are an adult is a difficult one, because a lot of times those parents still see the kids as little kids, right?
Mm.
So you know, that's something that I've noticed in my own life. And Trey, hey, you chime in on this.
Yeah, I'm gonna move forward in 1 second, but I
Okay.
totally agree with you, Steph. That, and it's so ironic that you're talking about the different generations, because I was actually doing some work today, some research today, exactly on that, and the fact that we're, Gen X, we got caught between the silent, the silent generation, the baby boomers, and then we created the millennials. Right. So we're that group of women. And that's what this program exactly is for: Gen X women and beyond. That's what I said when I just wrote the brief biography or brief description of this group earlier today. That's so ironic though, but we're always in tune with each other. But I wrote that this program, the Woman to Woman show, is for Gen X and beyond, a little beyond. So our parents have these expectations, just like we have expectations for our children that we have to let go of. And we have to understand too the mindset of our parents. And my mom's not here anymore, but her expectations were, and this is where my son and my ex-husband butt heads, because they were like, do as I say, do what I say. Don't worry about what I did to you. You trying to make it like I did something to you, right, Gina? Like, wait a minute, you gave me to my grandmother, and now all of a sudden you think I'm supposed to be doing this. That's not their mindset of, I'm shifting. I did what I needed to do back then.
Right.
Now this is a different era, because you even know with your own grandkids, because your kids look at you and say, well, if I did that when I was a kid, you would knock my head off, right? Or if I asked for a piece of cake before dinner, it will be an absolute no. But the grandkids might get a cookie or a piece of cake. So you have to put your mindset the same way with your mom. And I'm going to go around the room with anybody else who want to go next and talk about the fact that, have we made our parents the victim? Like, that's them, that's what happened, when actually we really wish that they would have stood up, even maybe if it was abusive relationship, wish that they would have left. Like, why didn't she leave? But instead I'm saying, but she did the best she could because she didn't have her mom her mom passed away at 15. How do we really internally feel? Because we really haven't talked about this, because these things have not really come up in our life, even in therapy. Like I said, when I was listening, I was like, I never even, and like Sheila said last night when we were talking, I never even thought about that. So Sheila, I'll pass the mic to you.
Well, actually, my take on it is a little bit differently. You know, all the negating that we've been doing for our parents' sake, I think it was more so out of protection, because we come from the era of the parents that did things out of duty and obligation. So that was kind of passed on to us, and I think as a result of that, we felt the need to protect them. You can even see that in children that have been abused, right? No matter how bad that abuse is, they are more inclined to stick with their parents, right? They're more inclined to go along with the excuse of, my parent didn't do it, and my parent didn't mean it, because we look to protect our parents just like we look to protect our children now.
Wow. Wow. I love that. Theo?
I'm gonna say that I don't know that I actually experienced, right, anything that I would feel like I need to blame or feel like I was a victim of. I will say that one of the things I learned in therapy was that was very helpful for me was when my therapist said, my dad is no longer here, but she was like, you really should just have a conversation with your mother and ask her about her life. And you will learn so much about how she operated and who she was, right? And so I would say that to anybody is if you're struggling with anything as it relates to parents, siblings, whatever, sometimes you just have to ask the person about their life and how they grew up because you'll learn um, how and why they did certain things. What I will say about forgiveness and what I believe I saw, and this just really popped in my head as I was growing up, just in the entire family dynamic, just not with my mother and my father, but with cousins and siblings and everything, is that somehow you just forgave, but you never spoke about what you were forgiving. Right. So, like if something went down and a family member is not talking to another family member, or someone is not talking to you, or someone feels the way about you, at some point you just begin talking again, but you never really talk about whatever it was that got you to the point of where there was a rift, right? And so that to me like just popped in my head, right? Like that's another way that I think we learn how to, as we grow older, deal with how people treat us, because we kind of just began to operate the way we were operating then, right? Somebody does something to you, you may stop talking for a while, you may not, and then at some point you just start speaking again, but you never address the issue, right?
So
Have you really forgiven?
that's and like I said, when I was talking to you guys last night after we did our course, is that healthy for us? And it's the Gen X is
Mm-hmm.
every woman that I spoke to within this bracket of women, we have been silenced to some degree. And I'm not saying it has affected us in a good way. Again, it hasn't shown up in anybody's relationships. Like I said, growing up for me, and until I really got coaching and therapy, I thought the proper thing to do was, somebody do something to you, punch you in your eye. I mean, I'm talking about my mother, and you just act like it didn't happen and you move on with your life, but it's still inside of you because it taught me a behavior of ignoring myself, ignoring my feelings, letting
Right.
people walk over me. And as we talked about last week, keeping the peace. How healthy is that for any of us? And Regina, you can jump in. Has that helped or has that served you in any way? Regina?
Yes. It's funny. I was I had to forgive myself because I was a fixer. I wanted to fix everything and make everything peaceful. Like I expressed last night, my dad was a womanizer, and so it was arguments in the home with him and my mom. So I have three brothers, and I was the only girl, and I can remember my dad going in with my mom. So I was like Superwoman. Here I am going to protect my mom. And my mom, on the other hand, is like, I didn't ask you to protect me. And they both tell me to get out of the room. So I'm feeling some type of way. And my brothers are sitting on the side, like playing with their toys. This is when we were little. And I remember one time my dad actually had a big argument with my mom and pushed her out of the house and was throwing shoes in out at her in our front lawn. And I run outside and I'm jumping on him, and he actually knocked her out, and she was out cold and she didn't even know. And then again my brothers sat there and they like nothing happened, and it was all silent. So the point to all that is I internalized that, and so in relationships with men, I was the mean one. I was not going to take anything. And I had some of my classmates in high school told me, and even guys I dealt, they just said I had such a wall up because I didn't know how to internalize that. I didn't know how to deal with that. And my dad was a good dad to me, but he was not a good husband. But then I stepped in and tried to be all these things. So it's all these emotions running around, and how do you departmentize that? So
Right.
I had to learn on trying to forgive myself because I'm having all these feelings, and even with my kids, I try to jump in and be the one, the peacemaker. Let me make this happen. Or with anyone, if there's always some controversy, I'm going to come in and try to be the one to break, but it's not my job.
Right. And again,
So,
you said something so good. Like, and I was thinking about this when we talked early yesterday, about forgiving ourselves for allowing certain things to happen to us. And
mhm,
just that self-forgiveness part that we shut off in ourselves to pretend like things didn't happen, right? Like to see these
mhm,
things. And then another thing too, Regina, that we have in common is that how do you love a person, a man, right? And this makes me very emotional. But how do you love a man that beat your mother? How do you love
right.
this person that and say, but he was good to me? It's this is the
Mhm,
part that we're digging deep now from us having these conversations on
mhm,
the back end, because why would I love this person that beat my mom, but he was good to me? So it's almost a self a self a war within yourself, right? Like, well,
right,
he
right.
was good to me. I love him. Well, he beat my mother. Why am I not so mad at him? So, Steph, if you want to jump in on that, please do. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. So one day I was having a conversation with a friend, and she slapped me in the face with some truth because, my former husband was a good dad to our children too, right? And she brought up a very good point. And this is what I would say. I would say, yes, if you take out the fact that he wasn't a good husband, he was a good father, right? But part of the role of a husband, of a father, is to teach the children how to be adults, right? So part of that lesson is to teach them how to have healthy relationships. And so this friend of mine was saying, no, he was not a good man.
Oh,
And you need to stop saying that, because part of a good man is being a good husband. And that's all I'm going to say.
ooh, wee. Oh, wait a minute. I think some of us
Wow.
got to process. Yep. Yeah. Go ahead, Gina. Regina.
That just slapped me in the face because I'm so busy trying to protect my dad. But the truth is the truth,
Mm.
because it hurt me in relationship with men. Um, I, Fortunately, no men ever beat me, but they mentally abused me, which
Ooh,
sometimes can be worse. My husband mentally abused me,
wow.
and I
But
turned into.
I think the other part about that, which is so poignant, is that it really does speak to how you end up in a relationship where you're constantly making excuses for the man, right? Because you've seen your mother get hit, but get up the next morning and make breakfast or tell you to go away because she's handling it. And so, to
Mhm.
Stephanie's point, I've done that several times where I've a relationship has ended, and I'll say, well, they weren't a bad person; they just had bad judgment, right? But then, but then my friends will be looking at me like, what are you smoking? Right? Like really, like no, that makes them, they were a bad person. Like they did something bad to you. Right. But I think it does translate into where when you're constantly seeing how forgiveness plays out in whatever environment you're in, how it does impact how you may show up in all types of relationships, whether it's an intimate relationship or a friendship.
Mm. I see you nodding, Sheila and Shayla. Y'all can jump in.
I'll say that oof, for where my parents come into play, I would say that I believe my forgiveness was in terms of I feel like they didn't know any better. So as I grew older and see as an adult what you go through in relationships and life in general, um, what they knew is what they knew. Now, if they knew better and did do better, then it would be a different situation. And how that's affected me in my relationship with men is that, particularly when I mentioned about my mom and how she dealt with people, is that I wouldn't ask the hard questions because I was always concerned about hurting his feelings and
Mm.
neglecting my own. So the hard questions wouldn't get asked because if I felt like it was going to lead into an argument or anything like that, I wanted to spare his feelings because I didn't want to become a burden to him.
Wow. Whoa. Sheila, you want to jump in?
Yeah,
Mm.
I sit back and think about it. Now, my mother has been gone for almost 20 years. And my father just passed away 4 months ago. And the commonality there is that, when you get together with relatives, as you're mourning, people start talking. So you start learning tidbits about the deceased person at that time. So we started learning a lot of things about our parents once they passed away. And it gets back to what Steph was saying about never asking the questions, never having the conversations. Because the irony is that as my father got older and he spoke very freely about his life and his views and his perception of things. But he would say things like, your daddy had a hard life. But I guess I don't know whether or not it was a respect level or if it was fear of, just not wanting to know. I never thought about asking him, well, Daddy, what do you mean by that? Because then that definitely would have given me a lot more insight into the man that he was.
Mhm.
Whoa. That is so good. And this is one thing I'm going to say about my mom. This is one thing I'm going to say about my mom. I don't believe my mother owes me an apology or owed me an apology. And any you guys can chime in too. I don't believe she owed me an apology or I wanted one. I just wish my mother would have left to show me something different so that I would know the proper way to forgive people, that I would know the proper way to set boundaries, that I would know that dysfunction was not normal because I've spent the majority of my life, even the majority of my adult life, thinking that dysfunction was normal. I've spent the majority of my adult life people pleasing. I spent the majority of my adult life not being happy because of the things that I saw. And I thought, and it trickled over into my Christianity because on top of seeing that, and again, suppressing it and never even thinking about it again, just, oh, let it go. But then to hear the word of God that says, if you don't forgive, God won't forgive you, which is totally taken out of context so many times. Because again, me and Steph talk about this all the time, where we used to, where we know we've grown so much. But forgiveness and reconciliation is two different things. But being in the home with my mother and my stepfather, forgiveness and reconciliation was one thing. There was no line in the sand. At the end of the day, it was all the same thing for me. You did something, nobody talks about it. So it's forgiveness, reconciliation, and we're all quiet and we're sleeping it under the rug. And there's so many of us that are this age, between the ages of, and we're saying the Gen X and a little beyond, who have these issues inside of us who need to deal with them. And I'm glad that we're here on this platform talking about it.
You know what, Trey? I didn't know that forgiveness and reconciliation were two different things until I started studying forgiveness. because I was the same way. And it's like how I dealt with an emotionally abusive relationship for so many years is because forgiveness for me and reconciliation was two different things. I mean, we're the same thing. But here's the thing: you can forgive a person and decide for yourself that you do not want to reconcile, because reconciliation involves mutuality.
Mm.
You can forgive someone and never talk to them again. You can forgive someone and talk to them again. It's your choice, whatever it is that you choose to do. And to your point, Trey, when you were talking about your mother, the thing that I learned when I wrote my book was that my mother and I felt the exact same way.
Wow.
The difference in the two of us were just simply personality. Her personality was to hold everything in and, force it to the point that she had anxiety all the time. And mine, I could never shut up. I would always be talking about if someone did something. I confronted my dad many times with his stuff, and he lied to me.
Wow.
And then I grow up, I get married, and basically I marry my father, right? I marry my father, and my mother gets mad at me because I did exactly what she did, and I stayed.
That is a reoccurring theme. Because Theo said she basically married her father, right? And it was something that wasn't positive about him that tied her ex-husband and her father together. And then Sheila on the other end of the spectrum said she wanted nobody like her father. So we're making decisions based on, and I always say this now, and I learned this along my journey, and I'm so glad that experiences are to teach us and not to mold us, right? We've been operating in the space of experiences molding us instead of teaching us, right? So it molds you into, I don't want a man like my father. For whatever for whatever that experience did, it molded me into a person that, and not to learn a lesson or to learn from it, or it molded me into the person of I'm going to marry a man like my father unconsciously because I don't have self-awareness. And Theo, I see you nodding, so come on in.
I do. Like we talked about the other night, right? Like I didn't even realize it, right? That I, not only married someone that was like my dad, but also ended the relationship as my mother did with my dad, right? For the same reason. Right. And that was eye-opening to me. I mean, but I think one of the things that stuck out is something Stephanie said that I really learned along my journey of really processing forgiveness, because I was one that could hold the grudge. I could, like, I was proud in my not forgiving you. But I learned that, the biggest thing that helped me was that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Like I could forgive someone and decide that I'm going to forgive them, but I'm going to love them from afar, or I'm never, I'm going to deal with them in a different way. And so I think that was a real eye opener for me and really helped me on my journey of really learning how to truly forgive. What was recognizing that forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things.
And we need to just emphasize that for so many people that are listening right now. And Steph, you could just say it one more time, because we just need to drive that home, that when people dishonor you, when people treat you bad, when people don't love you the proper way, when people disrespect you, you do not have to allow them in the space in order for you, because, and this is biblical, this is churchy, right? We're going to take this to church now, because church folks got us messed up a little bit. Church folks will have you messed up, because church people will tell you, oh, I thought you was a Christian. You ain't no Christian because you don't allow them in their space. So Steph, we're going to go to you, and then we're going to go to Gina next.
Yes. Okay. So let's just talk about what forgiveness is. Okay.
Please.
The definition of forgiveness is when unjustly wronged by another, You forgive by giving up the resentment that you have towards the person, right? You fully acknowledge that the person, whatever they did, was wrong and continues to do wrong, continues to be wrong. However, as an act of mercy, really is what it is. You decide not to hold it against them. You instead offer the offender compassion, benevolence, and love.
Mm.
That's the definition. All right. And then reconciliation is the restoration of friendly relations.
Woo! I hope somebody heard that tonight. People, listen, there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. One, you have to trust a person in order for them to be in your space, right? The Bible says forgive freely. Forgiveness is free. Reconciliation requires trust, and trust is earned, right?
Yes.
Forgiveness is free.
Mm-hmm.
Reconciliation requires trust, and trust is earned. So you don't have to have somebody in your space who has offended you if they have not earned your trust again. And if you see them doing the same thing, and we have to learn so much at our age, and I love this is for women our age. Again, when a person shows you who they are, believe them. We are the generation of giving 999 chances until the person walks away from us, and then we're standing there with our thumb up our. Oops, my mother used to say that. My bad. But we're standing there left holding the bag, and we feel bad, and we have to forgive ourselves for allowing this person to offend us and to use us until they have moved on, until they have actually used us to get over us. How many of us have let a person, a man, use us to get over us and walk away from us? Come on now. Come on in, Gina.
Well, there's a lot to take in, so I'm going to be concise in what I say right now. Um, I know you said forgiveness is free and reconciliation has to be earned. I also believe somewhere in there you have to have peace of mind. So, as I think about the conversation I'm going to have with my mom, because I told her before New Year's Eve, I said, Mom, man, you need to talk. And she was like, Well, what is it? Because I don't want to get upset. I said, Well, I'm going to talk to you. I'm not going to give you the short version. We're going to have a talk. So, I wasn't going to fall for that, like giving her, a little preview. I want to sit down and have a loving but honest conversation because I need that clarity. And it's not even to be negative, but it's because I love her and because I had to accept and forgive myself for comparing her to my grandmother. And I did that a lot. I'm like, well, grandma did this, and I wanted her to be a certain type of grandmother to my children, which it was different generation, different expectations. I had to understand that. So I think peace of mind goes, I think, hand in hand with forgiveness, especially if you're a believer, if you believe in Jehovah and you know that part of that relationship is that, we're not perfect. So even if the forgiveness that we require isn't a big thing, it's still a level that's required, whether that person wants to still engage with us or not. So it's levels to the forgiveness, though, depending on what the offense was and how deep it went. But there also has to be that desire to let it go and not let it fester and build negative energy in you and then in your other relationships because you still haven't dealt with that issue of forgiveness. So I just think it's really important to understand that there's levels to it. There's a level of having peace of mind. When you forgive, there is a sincere, you know, because you're not harboring that anger, you're not holding that person accountable like they owe you something, and you can move on whether you agree to be in relationship with them and build that foundation or let it go, but still have that forgiveness and know that you're okay, whichever way it goes.
I want
Um,
to say, I just want to say something really quick, Stephanie. You can tell me this too, as it pertaining to forgiveness. And me and Theo had this revelation that, we had said we've forgiven the guys that were in our lives that offended us or betrayed us, but we hadn't expressed our anger. I just want people to understand that anger is natural. Anger is no, it's not that you're not supposed to. It's okay to get angry. It's what you do with the anger. And so many of us skip that phase of allowing ourselves to be angry at a person that we need to forgive. It's okay to go through that process of dealing with the anger of the person that offended you that you have to forgive. And so many times we suppress that anger so we don't really get to the point of forgiveness. Because, like I said, I had that aha moment. And then Theo said the same thing last night. Like, Trey, when you said that, it opened something up in me that I had said, oh yeah, I forgive him and I give myself this phrase right here. I want us all to stop hanging on this phrase. I give myself closure. I give myself, yeah, we can give ourselves closure, right? But we have the right to have our feelings. Our feelings are valid. The anger, the sadness, the depression, it's all valid, but we've been taught to suppress that. And I want every woman on here to understand that we do have emotions. We do get to go through those phases of grief. We do get to be angry. We don't have to leave that anger piece out like we always do. Oh, I forgive everybody. I'm a Christian. I'm a good person. So I forgive. And then really inside of you, you still have like your back will hurt or whatever that thing, how it shows up in you because you haven't totally forgiven the person to free yourself because unforgiveness is a prison that you put yourself in. Steph?
Yeah. Okay. So much. So much. Okay. So what I want to say about the anger part is so important, and that because it's the part is it says be ye angry but sin not. That's the part that we have a trouble with, is the sinning part. But it is so important to acknowledge that we judge our feelings so much. Why am I feeling this way? You feel this way. Feelings are neither right or wrong. They are real. And we need to stop judging ourselves because we feel a certain way. Give yourself a break. Give yourself grace. Allow yourself to feel whatever you feel. And like I said, feelings are neither right or wrong, but they are real. And we need to acknowledge them, because I feel like when we don't acknowledge our feelings, and that's how we learn how to mistrust ourselves, because really what you're doing is you're lying to yourself. And so if you keep on lying to yourself, sooner or later, you're going to stop trusting yourself. And so allow yourself to have that space. The anger, that's a big part of the grieving process. Whenever we go through something, whatever it is, there is a loss, and a loss needs to be grieved, right? There's what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to grief, right? And it's not a linear process, but we do need to move through those processes: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. And then sometimes you'll have a trigger which will kick you right back into grief, and you got to process that again. Like Regina says, forgiveness is on levels, and it's true. It is so true.
She said, feelings are neither right nor wrong. They are real. Somebody dropped the mic on that one.
Drop two mics.
Two. What? That is right. Shayla, you had something to say?
Can I just say thank you so much, Steph, for saying that, because I had a moment where I thoroughly understood what that phrase is when you I did commit murder, but I did something that was out of character because I was in that moment of hurt and disbelief and anger, and I did something that was out of my character. So I understood at that moment how what is it, crimes of passion, or when people do things that, or temporary insanity. That's the word. So yeah, allow yourself to feel, because I at one point I almost beat myself up for feeling that way, but then I was like, nah, this happened to me. I'm not crazy. I know what happened. I was there. I was in it. And I'm not going to allow anybody to diminish that, because I've had comments said to me like, are you sure you didn't misread the situation, or you're too old to, you should know better because you're older, and things like that. And I'm like, nah, you weren't there, I was, and I'm gonna stick to it. I was done wrong, and that's it.
Mm.
I just didn't stay in it. Like, I went through the process, as Steph said. And once I hit that rock bottom, and that came a day that I came home from work, because I was like a zombie, came home from work, went in the shower and turned the shower on, slumped down and cried. I don't know for how long I was in my shower, and I cried, just cried. But once I got out of there, dried myself off, got myself together, and decided at that moment, that was rock bottom. So the only place to go was up.
Woo-wee, come on now.
But that is so true though. That is so true. Because Trey, you remember the phone call, right?
Yes.
You remember the call I made to you in tears. I'm leaving girlfriend's way. I can't believe I've been acting like this. And it really came from the fact that I was not allowing myself to feel. And when I did feel, I was like, oh my God, you're not supposed to act like this.
Mm.
Right. And so now you got to resign from the girlfriend play board, and you got to do all of this stuff. And you were like, Theo, relax. You're human. And so I think what Steph said was so on point. And what you said is so on point. We do have to realize that we are human beings, and part of a breakup, any type of breakup, intimate, friendship, whatever, you go through the same stages of grief as you would if you lost someone to death. Now it's different because, as Gina said, it's a different level to it, but you do have to allow yourself to experience all the range of emotions that you go through. And some of that might be that you act out of character.
And the thing about that too is, we've been told as women we're supposed to be nurturers, and we're not supposed to behave a certain way. And it's okay if we behave a certain way, but when we know better, we do better, right? We have that and that's forgiveness piece has to come in, because over the last 5 years, I'm proud of myself because I've been able to control myself. And I always say that self-control is the beginning of winning. But the reason why I have that saying is because I had to tell myself that for so many years, because I would bust the windows out your car, right? So this last breakup that I had, I knew that I was at another level in my life, because I didn't want to, but I could have, but I didn't want to bust the windows out the car. I was just like, you know what? I was whole before he came, and I'm whole now. I was alive before he came. I'm alive now. I'm going to be all right. But I was angry, and that was the one emotion that I left out, which was still holding me in bondage, because, again, like Steph said, I was lying to myself. Like, you okay, you good. You did, but I had never, ever faced the fact that through that process, even though I wasn't angry anymore, but I had never, ever said out loud that I was pissed off from what happened to me, which was not full forgiveness. It was a piece that I missed. And it's like, you cannot go from addition, subtraction, multiplication. You can't skip steps. Eventually, you're going to get to the part where, why is the math not making sense? Because you don't know how to subtract, boo. You skipped the whole step. So you got to go back to the beginning of that. And that was an aha moment, I think, for me and Theo of, whoa, I'm free now, because I finally just said out loud I was pissed off at this dude. Like, I give myself closure, and I pray for him, and I wish him well, and I hope that the next person that he's with, and I hope they're good. After you skip the fact, I accept that it's over. You really don't, because you really never ever told anybody that you were mad at this person. Steph, go ahead.
I just wanted to, and I love everybody here. Okay, y'all. I'm ready to say something that might step on a toe or two. This whole thing about acting out of character. Okay. No, that was in your character because you did it.
Uh-oh.
So we can just don't say that again. Now, you might say, okay, that's something I would not want to do. But here's the thing. And it's a principle, and I can't remember the philosopher, but he says, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, they become your destiny. But when these things happen, ways that we lash out, that's because there was something living inside of us that we hadn't processed.
And
So,
and Steph can say that. You know why? And I always use this phrase when we are healing and growing, because Steph can actually say to us who said that's not in my character, I'm not judging, I used to be you. Steph, they don't know your story about your anger and going to jail for acting out a character that wasn't part of you, but it was part.
And I was a tongue talking Christian each time that I went to jail too. So that wasn't the character of Jesus, but that was Stephanie's character at that moment in time, because she hadn't gotten control of her rage.
Woo.
I'll take the correction.
But that's real talk, so I receive it. That's real talk, so I receive it.
We can't do nothing but.
Hey, listen, Trey, you taught me to own all of my stuff.
Yes.
So if I own all of my stuff, can't nobody do nothing to me, because I've told it all. Y'all can't nobody hold. I've owned it all, even the parts that I acted out of the character of Jesus.
Yes. So we're at 8:50, so we only have 10 minutes left. So we're gonna do our final thought round. If you just tuned in, you're tuned into the Woman to Woman show. We're here every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can join us. Please comment on our YouTube channel, comment on our Facebook page. Let us know what topics you would like us to talk about. This is the Woman to Woman show. It is for Generation X women, Gen X, and beyond. This is for women who have gone through some things in life, who are just ready to live their best life. And we haven't had the opportunity to be free to have these conversations. And this is a safe place for us to heal. This is a safe place for us to grow and to share. And we've said some things out of our mouths. And y'all know me, I'm the big mouth, transparent one. But when I listened to myself the other day, I was like, did I really say that? Like, oh no. But we just here speaking our truth, because we believe here that truth plus transparency equals healing. So we're going to go around the room and have our final thought on forgiveness. And anybody can jump in and go first, whoever would like to go first.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
It's okay to be real with your feelings, and it's okay to process that anger. And I think that's the one thing I'm becoming clear on, that it's okay to be angry. It's what you do in that anger. It's okay to have that other part of yourself that you try to, keep under wraps because you don't want to come out of character, or let that part of your character come out.
Woo!
So I think that as it relates to my mom, because I love her so much, I've kept a lid on my frustration about certain expectations. So I'm going to let it out before I see her, so I can properly have the right conversation that I really want to have in love. But see, what was said tonight made me realize that I've been pissed off about a few things for a minute. And while I was trying to be the peacemaker, and just happy that things are kind of growing in certain areas of my sister and her relationship, I had to check myself and be like, look at here, you still upset about a couple of things, but you haven't expressed it, because I was so busy trying to calm someone else down when they were upset. And I'm over here, feeling a little something. So yeah, I'm going to address that, with my sister, have a real heart to heart, because I can really kind of let it all out the way I need to. And but then really have that honest conversation I need to have with my mom, so that she doesn't feel like I don't love her or want that with her. But I have to be honest about the expectation and where it's been taking me, because it's been frustrating every time. I'm like, well, so I'm supposed to run now, I'm supposed to come over there, I'm supposed to do this. And I'm like, Regina, why you feeling like this? You forgave already. Or did you? You resolved that already. Or did you really? Everything's all good. Or is it really? So now, this time around, I'm being honest with it, all of it, but I have to do it in love. I have to do it in love because I don't want to say stuff to hurt her. I want us to heal so we can have a real understanding where we are. I want her to understand who I am as her daughter and where I'm coming from. And I also accept the fact that she's not my grandmother.
Oh, this is so good. This is so good and so healthy and so juicy, right? Because the real truth is, Gina, is that sometimes the truth is gonna hurt people,
Yeah.
but they're gonna get over it. So we're gonna do our final word. Who wants to jump in next?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
I will say the one thing that I think I'm walking away with tonight is around the whole forgiveness and reconciliation being two different things. But also the realization for me tonight is that the only person that I need to forgive and reconcile with is myself.
Hmm.
Right. And so I totally believe that forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things, because they are. But I do think for me, there's a point where I have to forgive myself and truly forgive myself, which means that there has to be true reconciliation with who I am as an individual in all aspects of what that means.
Wow. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. Regina, you want to come in next?
Yes. I want to say, be honest with yourself, because that is what I've gotten out of this. Because there's some things that just popped up as we were speaking. Like I said, my dad was a womanizer, but I played a role in that too, because it was a double set, a double swedged war sword. Because my mom was willing to leave, and she told us she was going to leave. And guess what I did? The little girl in me, um, I would throw a fit. Even if they had this big knockout fight, I would throw a fit like, "You can't leave. How's that going to look?" Image. So
Wow.
my mom stayed. So I have to be honest with myself. I played a role in it, even though I said I was protecting her, but I was protecting the image as well. So I have to forgive that, because that image of what it was going to look like to the neighbors or to whoever or to the family. But my mom was strong enough to leave, but I didn't want the family unit to dissolve, but it was so unfunctional. And then when I got old enough to realize how unfunctional it was, I was at my mom like, "Why'd you stay?" But then now it clicked back to me for all those times I jumped up. Like, would she have left? Did she really listen to me? But I have to forgive myself and take ownership on the part that I played in it.
Wow. Wow. And this is what I'm talking about. The Woman to Woman show is
Mhm.
real conversations to really make not only us as a unit think, but those who are listening. And I'm loving the comments. Amazing truth spoken tonight. Thanks, ladies.
Mhm.
Love to talk and open my mind up to understand the nature of how we do things. Thank you. I needed the self-examination. This is good. Awesome information, ladies. So true. Um, wow, that's deep, because I was raised that my feelings weren't valid. So whenever I express them, I'm dismissed and shut down. So I'm happy that these people have the opportunity to reflect on things like, oh, wait a minute, this happened. Like we talked on the back end the other last night, ladies, of, I talked about a scenario where my mom tried to commit suicide, and it, triggered something in Regina where she remembers something like that happened to us, because we haven't had moments together as women, as men, as a unit, to just sit and say, this happened to me. And we've suppressed some things and we made it into living a lie. And my final word would be, no more living a lie. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's have these real conversations, not only here, but with our families, because we've buried things, we've swept things under the rugs, and we come together with our families and our friends and we live a complete lie. And it's time for the mask to fall off. And it makes me so sad and emotional when I'm editing and I'm hearing these things. And I'm like, God, we've been carrying this around for a long time and we just pretended like it wasn't there until somebody said something and gave us a safe space to share our truth. So Shayla, you want to give your final words?
Yes, I'll just say that I'll echo what I said last week in that you go through what you must go through. And like Trey said earlier, you can learn from it or allow it to turn you into somebody that you're not. But go through what you must go through, learn the lesson, don't stay down, get back up, dust yourself off, and keep living.
Mm. Sheila?
I've got a compilation of some of the things that we talked about tonight. It's okay to forgive and reconcile. It's okay to forgive and trust yourself to not allow somebody back into your space. It's okay to own your stuff. It's okay to recognize your character.
Mm.
It's okay to ask the questions. And finally, it's okay to forgive yourself.
Wow. Steph?
That's awesome.
Oh.
I just want to end it by really just saying once again, if you buried it, it's still alive and it's manifesting somewhere in your life. But the beautiful thing about forgiveness that once you start, because forgiveness is a skill and it's a muscle. And once you start forgiving in one area, you'll start to peel back the layers, and it'll start being revealed to you other areas that you need to let go of. And so that's why, and I said last week, conflict resolution, that is another skill that we need to learn, because most of us did not learn how to resolve conflict at home in a healthy way. And I believe that's what it really comes boils down to, learning how to resolve conflict.
Mm.
Um, and the other thing is that it is another thing that's so important to keep our hearts clear, right? If we don't go to bed angry.
Yeah.
Even if you don't confront the person or talk about it, write it down in a journal. A
Mm.
lot of times, if we just write things down, you get it out. It's not inside, right? And then maybe you'll have the courage, or you'll have the opportunity to talk about it to that person. But the thing about it, like I said, most of us did not learn healthy ways to resolve conflict, because conflict is uncomfortable a lot of times, but it's so necessary. Like Trey says, truth plus transparency equals healing. And that's how we heal, when we have the courage to tell ourselves the truth.
Mm. Conflict resolution. Without conflict resolution, there is no forgiveness because you have not resolved the conflict. So, how can you actually forgive somebody for a conflict that you have not resolved? And listen, so thank you for tuning in, everybody. Again, this is the Woman to Woman show. We thank you for your time because it is a privilege to be in your life. Follow us on Instagram at W2W Show, at W2W Show. Please subscribe to our New You Nation Network YouTube channel. And don't forget to share, because sharing is caring. Again, we believe here on the Woman to Woman show that truth plus transparency equals healing. And remember this, you're only as sick as your secrets. It's healing time. See you next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Woman to Woman show on the New You Nation Network. Again, follow, friend, and like each of us, and we will see you next week. Peace and blessings.